Converted man here. The purpose of this video will be to analyze and critique Steve Brule's comments that he has made about atheism in the following video. I'll be pointing out logical fallacies as they occur. If he wishes to rebuttal this video, or if anyone wishes to rebuttal this video, they must do so by pointing out which fallacies I have misidentified. And it's possible that I'll grant that in the comment section. Of course, the only way to negate my conclusion would be to demonstrate that every logical fallacy that I've pointed out is incorrect. As if you have only one logical fallacy, then that means your argumentation is one that we must be skeptical of its conclusion. The argument is flawed, and you need to fix it.
Imagine a primitive tribe in the center of a jungle. Their cosmology includes the idea that all water comes from a giant ocean full of living things on the other side of an enormous mountain. And this ocean god sends them rain in the form of clouds so that they may live. After thousands of years, they develop the necessary tools to cross over the mountain, so they send an envoy to pay homage to their god. But when the expedition returns, they report that they saw no ocean. The tribe is immediately divided into two groups. The first group believes that their ocean god must be somewhere else, while the second group decides that oceans don't exist. Not just their ocean, but they insist that all concepts of the ocean are false. This is the origin of atheism.
An analogy is a cognitive process of transferring information or meaning from a particular subject to another, a linguistic expression corresponding to such a process. It's making something complicated into something simple. It's like apples and oranges. Comparing these two things is fairly simple. But a false analogy occurs when one presents an analogy that is simply not true. In this case, suggesting that the origin of atheism is anything close to what was presented as the origin of atheism is simply, well, it's untrue, but additionally it's also a false analogy. Atheism's been around probably since humans have been around, but as far as the terminology goes, that wasn't developed until the late 16th century France, sometime around there. And as far as Western atheism goes, that's all the way back to Greek philosophy. So it's been around a while. But to say its origin is anything like this, well, it's just not true. And also, the story isn't true. And since the story is an analogy, then that makes it a false analogy.
Atheists insist that there is no God.
This is simply not true. Some atheists may indeed say that there's no God, whereas others may say that they do not believe in God, while as others may not even know what the word God is, and thus say, I can't say that I believe in it until you tell me what God is. To say that atheists say that there's no God is too broad of an oversimplification.
And their argument usually relies upon the fact that there is no scientific proof of God.
Their argument usually, really? By what metric? Do you have a study that shows the different various atheist arguments that have been made, and then can pull from that study a percentage of atheist arguments to show that this is the case? If you do not have such a study, then this is nothing more than an attempt at a straw man, a weaker version of whatever the argument at hand actually is what you're going to go after. If you could prove that this was the case, that'd be something else. But since you haven't proven it, then this is nothing more than a straw man.
But this same standard is not applied to all ideas. The Big Bang Theory, for example, has not been proven. It merely remains consistent with observation.
Proven is not a thing that occurs within scientific theorem. A theory is a carefully thought out explanation for observations of the natural world that has been constructed using the scientific method, in which brings together many facts and hypotheses. The word proven is simply not applicable to science. So to suggest then that we atheists are trying to say that we only accept things that are proven by science is to say that we do not understand what science is. Because by understanding what science is, one could not make the statement that science proves things in such a way. Now, via the principle of surety, we might think that somebody saying that they want scientific proof is actually asking for scientific evidence of any given phenomenon. Simply, they're mistaking proof for evidence can be understood and understandable, because natural language is a difficult thing to wrap one's mind around, and hey, we don't always have the correct term ready in the back of our mind to pull forward. However, if one does not want to use the principle of surety because perhaps one has a particular aim at attacking a viewpoint that has not actually been expressed by somebody, then one would not use the principle of surety at all. One that doesn't do that might incur some logical fallacies along the way. In this case, again, straw man fallacy. This isn't an argument that anyone's actually made, and it is a far weaker version of any argument that one might make. Therefore, it's that fallacy. So stop that. Don't do that. Stop it.
Before I go further, I would like to point out that some atheists claim that their disbelief in the existence of God is not the same as the belief that God doesn't exist. I'm not going to make that distinction here because it doesn't change my argument or my conclusion.
But the fact that you admit that does negate your statement when you said this.
Atheists insist that there is no God.
So it's not true that atheists insist that there's no God. Oops.
I'm going to defer to the Encyclopedia Britannica's description of atheism. Generally, atheism is a denial of God or of the gods.
These are the two sections that you've picked from the encyclopedia that you've also picked to represent what you think atheism is. These are separated by a lot of text, and your presentation almost makes it seem like you want us to think that the definition of atheism is equal to the explanation of atheism, which are two separate things, which is clear when you read the original source, but not clear when you present it on screen as you have. However, that in and of itself isn't a fallacy. What is a fallacy is cherry picking. Like, for example, not using other encyclopedias, like this one from Stanford, the Encyclopedia of Philosophy, that has a far broader definition of atheism and a more complete picture to offer. It's almost like you're deciding on which encyclopedia to choose from and then picking the one that happens to agree with your conclusion. Yeah, that's what cherry picking is. So that's the fallacy you just did.
And if religion is defined in terms of belief in spiritual beings, then atheism is the rejection of all religious belief. And further, atheism, quote, casts a wider net than the claims made by specific religions like Christianity, and rejects all belief in spiritual beings.
Oh, wait, you are trying to get us to think that these are the definition of atheism rather than one being the explanation of atheism and then the one being the definition. So yeah, that also then is cherry picking, and there's some other terminology for it. What's it called? Misleading, lying, misrepresenting, something like that. But that's not technically a logical fallacy, it's just wrong. So I can't count it. But I can count the cherry picking again, so I will do that.
The term spiritual beings mentioned here includes concepts like angels, demons, spirit, and the soul.
If only you had a poll to show that the majority of atheists don't believe in the spiritual, then I could perhaps agree with you on this point. But you don't have that poll, so I cannot do that. This is not a logical fallacy, per se, but it is a lack of citation on your part, so it's something I think would be fair to disregard.
The scientific method, and we'll just call it science here, pioneered by Sir Francis Bacon in 1620, was deliberately designed to exclude questions of meaning from consideration in favor of physical descriptions of the material world. That is to say, that science excludes from view any idea that will not submit to experimental proof. It does not follow that those ideas must be false. And yet that is the reasoning that atheists use to dismiss all conceptions of God.
Pure fiction.
Nope. Nope, and nope. This, again, is just another straw man. That seems to be the bulk of this entire presentation, to be honest, at this point. It's repeated, ad nauseum straw man. So, I don't really need to go further because my point's been made. 6 fallacies is more than enough fallacies to conclude that we must be skeptical of the conclusion that Steve makes. To be skeptical of a conclusion means that we hold in judgment whether or not the conclusion is true or false until the person is able and willing to provide an argumentation that does not contain any logical fallacies. This particular argumentation contains at least 6, so that's 6 too many. Fix the argument. I'm sure if I keep going, I'll just encounter more logical fallacies. And, well, maybe I will continue going in a part 2 if need be. But I think I will go on to my subjective opinions about what has been said thus far and conclude this video here for now. I honestly expect a little bit more from Steve because I know that he has done really good research in regards to feminism. I was able to interview him, and that was something that I found important to do. Viewers of my channel don't really care, and as such, that video didn't get very much views. And what feedback I did have got so insane that I had to turn on and off comments until people calmed down. Once they did calm down, I was able to leave on comments. People just have ideas and preconceptions of what feminism is versus what it really is, which are two different things. If I was to defend feminism just by looking at a dictionary, Steve would be wrong every single time. And many people do approach the issue of feminism in this very low resolution way. They look at a definition, say, that's what it is, and go from there. They don't look at anything that any feminist has ever written, or feminist papers, or studies, or anything of that nature. They don't dig deeper. Now, sometimes it might be useful also to speak to a feminist or two or three, if they'll indeed talk to you, which is a difficult thing to do, especially if you've been known as an anti-feminist. But in this case, Steve has access to me, an atheist. So he could have asked me my thoughts on this, and I would have told him, this is a giant straw man. Don't produce this video. It's wrong. You're wrong. No, that's not why atheists deny or don't believe in God. And not all atheists deny or disbelieve or whatever in the spirit, soul, or spiritual things. Some atheists do. I don't know what the percentage is. I know from the atheists I've dealt with, but that's a very small data set. We would need a larger sample size to draw from. And getting such a poll conducted would cost some money. There might be a poll like that already online that one could find if one dug hard enough. I didn't dig that hard, and so I didn't find one, but it's not my burden to do so because I'm not trying to make an argument one way or the other. I'm simply being skeptical of the situation at hand. Atheism is perfectly tenable. By the way, what does it mean, untenable, anyways? Says not to be able to be maintained or defended against attack or objection. Well, I think I have defended its attack here, and I'm able to maintain atheism pretty well. I don't believe in God, but not because God is not proven by science. That is a problem, but it is not the sole reason I don't believe in it. I don't believe in it because I don't have any evidence for it. If we did have evidence for it, then we probably would have science about it. But we don't, so we don't. But to think it's the other way when it isn't, well, that's just incorrect. If God, whatever God is, wants to prove itself and is able and willing to do so, then it's free to do so at any moment, and then I'll know I'm wrong. So far, nothing. As far as souls, spirits, or spirituality goes, I personally don't believe in the soul or the spirit, but spirituality, I don't care for the word, but if that's the word that we have for the awe and amazement in regards to how reality functions, sure, I have that. I just don't like the terminology, so I personally don't use it. I call it awe or wonder. I don't like call it spirituality. But if you would rather call it spirituality, go for it. If you want to put forward what your beliefs are, what your spiritualism is, what your ideas are, that's a good thing to do, and that's worth knowing and exploring. Why do you believe in X, Y, and Z? Let us know. Of course, if you say X, Y, and Z is true, then I'm going to analyze it for logical fallacies and point out any that you might make, and I'm also going to demand that you prove any and all of your points. And how do we go about proving things? Well, I already said it earlier, we don't really prove things in science, but at least it's something. I do not believe in God for the reasons that Steve stated, and I am an atheist. I'm a skeptic, and that makes me an atheist, but I'm still an atheist. So I'm the counterexample to this entire presentation. So for me, I don't even have to be skeptical about his conclusion. I know that his conclusion is wrong. But for the rest of you, well, using logic and logic alone, and noting that he has one or more fallacies, we must be skeptical of his conclusion. I'll do part 2 if need be. But for now, I'm done. See ya. Finn. That's it. That's it. That's the end of the video. There's nothing more. Thanks for watching. Here's where I would list Patreons if I had them still. I mean, I guess you could buy my book if you want to support me that way. If you've already bought my book, then I don't know what to tell you. I did 2 books, but you might have bought both of them. You could just throw money at me. I'm not really sure if my PayPal's been updated, though. If you really want to send me money, email me and I'll let you know how to do that, I guess. But, yeah, that's it. That's the end of the video. Like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, do all those things. I'm drifting off away into the background and fading into the thing. Would be to demonstrate that every fallacy is a knock at the door, which I now have to get. And that fucks up my recording of this.